Hi, and welcome back to the amenable podcast. This is the show all about sharing our experiences of disability, neurodivergence, and long-term health conditions in the UK higher education system. I'm Kath, and this week I am joined by Kai. Kai is a student at the University of Manchester, reading for a PhD in pure mathematics. Their thesis goes over my head. I can't wait to ask about this later. It focuses on density combinatorics of amenable groups using ergodic methods.
Close enough.
Yeah, fair enough. I am a chronic humanities student. I'm not quite sure what this means, but we're going to ask about it later. I'm very excited to find out what it is because, those are all words to me, but I don't know what they mean. As is becoming tradition on this show, I've now got quite a big Manchester link. So Kai is a PhD at Manchester, a member of Manchester's Neurodivergent Staff Network, where they are the PGR co-chair. They're also the inclusion officer of the Disabled Student Society and the PGR representative for the School of Natural Sciences. This episode follows interviews with staff at Manchester, including Katie and Jackie, both of whom are active members of Manchester's neurodivergent and disabled staff scene. So it's actually nice to have someone who's a student on for once, albeit a PGR. It's a pleasure to have Kai on the show today, and I cannot wait to get started. Hi, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Cool. Please could you introduce yourself and just share a little bit about your background in higher education?
Don't know what else to add, but I guess I'll cover the basics again. So I'm Kai Prince. I study a part-time PhD in pure maths at the University of Manchester. I'm also studying a postgraduate certification in higher education. I'm the inclusion officer of the Disabled Student Society, postgraduate researcher co-chair of the Neurodivergent Staff Network. I have other roles, including working part-time in a library student team. I'm on the project team for the Realising Disability Inclusion for PGRs and ECRs project. That's also led by Jackie as well. And then I'm one of the current co-owners of the Disabled PGR WhatsApp, and I do some maths outreach mentoring, and I can't remember what else, but I think that's it.
Yeah, it's so nice to see all the Manchester people working together, because Jackie was on the show a while ago now, and it's kind of set a precedent that I get to interview a bunch of you, and everyone's been really wonderful so far.
Yeah, they've all been wonderful off podcasts as well.
Good.
It's an interesting set of people at the University of Manchester, and I don't know, I feel like there should be more publicity around our disability work, which I guess this podcast is good for. Yes,
absolutely, and we'll share this as wide as we can. So I know a little bit about what you're going to kind of say throughout the show. I'm very excited to share your experience, as I have been with your colleagues at Manchester. But if you are comfortable saying, how did your disabilities, neurodivergence impact your experience of higher education?
So I've had depression for most of my life and wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until the end of the first year of my PhD. And there was a period where I was treated for, I'm doing the hand signals for quotation, but attenuated symptoms of depressive psychosis during the second and third years of my integrated masters. And for me, this meant I struggled a lot with procrastination and attention, but I was also very reliant on other people in overcoming the gaps in motivation and verifying shared memories. And on top of needing to work part-time during my degree, it meant my degree was very stressful to get through, and my PhD fortunately has shifted from starting with panic and overwhelming sense of imposter syndrome to becoming very accommodating. So yeah, I guess in general, it started off as very toxic, internally toxic kind of stress. And then over the past few years, I kind of changed drastically, like due to all the relearning and like overcoming the skill regression that happened after I was diagnosed.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough. You need that space, don't you? Were you at Manchester from your bachelor's?
Yeah. So I started in 2018 doing an integrated master's in maths, which was like a 4-year thing.
I guess part of that would have been through the pandemic as well, and that would have been a whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it's become more accommodating nowadays. I think that sometimes neurodivergent folk can struggle through PhDs. Sometimes it's because of the supervisory team, sometimes it's other health stuff. But I am really glad that it's become an accommodating experience for you. We'll hit the positives in a second. I kind of start on a low note and then we build our way up. So we'll get there, I promise, and we'll talk about the good things again.
That's like my journey.
Yeah, we follow the hero's narrative. So I was wondering, you've kind of alluded to it there, but did you encounter any obstacles during your experience of higher education, especially, because you were at Manchester the whole time, maybe there's some continuity there. Did you manage to navigate these obstacles, and if so, how?
Yeah, I don't know where to start, but I guess, yeah, I kind of received therapy for depression when I was like 17 or 18, I don't quite remember. And then I think there was like 2 more moments where I was receiving like CBT after that. But before university, I took a gap year, and during that gap year, like, I was receiving therapy, but then it was put on hold because I got referred to receive an autism assessment, and the therapist, I think, said something along the lines of like they weren't specialized enough to continue therapy with me. And then the Autism Assessment Centre forgot to organise that second assessment appointment, and like overall, I got a negative result for autism during the second semester of my first year. But fortunately, my first year was fine. It was either easy to learn the content or I already knew the content for the first year. But yeah, I thought I was doing fine, so I didn't go back to therapy after getting the result. A good anecdote is that I looked back over the medical notes like years later, and I was supposed to get assessed for ADHD as well, but that just fell off the radar. So I thought I was doing well, and kind of had like a breakdown at the start of my second year. Like my best friends at the time recognized that I was showing warning signs of like depressive psychosis, and that was shortly before that breakdown. So it was a good timing there, because I was starting to seek out help for that. And yeah, it was just weird to go from everything's fine, but then being shown that maybe I was in denial or not really noticing that I wasn't actually doing that well. So yeah, I got referred to NHS EDIT. So they're the early detection and intervention team for things like depressive psychosis. And like looking back, like I feel like my unidentified sensory differences, like from my ADHD and the inattention, kind of contributed towards like my distrust of my own experiences. And like that's on top of like experiencing gaslighting from multiple people. But the hallucinations and false memories that I experienced is very strange to look back on, because I don't know, I've not really processed it fully, but it's as if not trusting my own reality just made those experiences happen. And I guess, yeah, it's not something that's usually talked about.
I've never met anyone that I know of who's had to like reacclimate to trusting themselves in false memories again. I know people who've known people and they had to do a lot of reassurance and a lot of things like that, but it's not something I've ever, I guess, experienced or had to help a friend through. So I wouldn't know quite what that was like. Was it a lot of just support essentially from your friends as well as like on top of the work from the undiagnosed ADHD?
It depends.
Fair.
So I worked with the therapist to kind of build back that trust. And a lot of that started with like sensory differences, like recognizing that, yeah, because I hear my name somehow in like this cluster of noise, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm hallucinating, or just because I experience sounds or whatever, it doesn't mean that they didn't happen. There's actually this moment where like partway through the therapy, I kind of trusted that even though no one else heard the doorbell ring, I trusted that maybe that did happen. And then it kind of helped me realize that my hearing might just be a bit more sensitive, and that it doesn't mean that I'm hearing hallucinations.
Yeah, because sensitive hearings also can be a part of the neurodivergent experience. So that's like a very valid extra thing, yeah. And then, so you worked with Edit, and I'm guessing that was, so your second year, which would have been 2019. And then I'm aware you moved to remote learning as well. So how was that for you? It might have been like not really of note, but did you notice anything from that?
There were some problems, but that's because the lockdowns were just so sudden. No one foresaw that happening. So yeah, halfway through my second year, I failed an exam, got mitigating circumstances. It was like to do with medication, but because of the sudden lockdown, there was issues during the resit, that exam not being marked as like a first resit attempt. But other than that, I guess it was the most accommodating time of my life, I guess, because I finally had free time. Furlough pay was good. But during my degree, I didn't really engage well with in-person sessions like lectures and seminars. I kind of engaged more with lecture notes and learning from home. So the remote learning period, like everything was designed for that. It made it more easy to learn for me.
Good. Yeah, it was one of those things. I have interviewed a few people who went to the Open University, and because the OU is already mostly remote learning, or if not entirely, then they got hit with the lockdowns and were like, yeah, everything just kind of continued as normal and it was fine. And we watched all these like other universities go into meltdown. But I think that there's a tendency to forget like how remote learning can work for people, especially nowadays when that might not be something that's retained anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really don't like the current trends to move things back in person or just completely forget about all the lessons we learned with the remote learning period.
Yeah. So that was your third year that would have been moved online. So was your fourth year also, was it kind of that time where it was half remote and half in person and it depended on the module and there were like extra laws in place? Was it around that time?
I don't quite remember.
That's fair.
I think third year was half remote, and then the second semester we were slowly moving onto campus again. And then the fourth year, I think it was completely on campus. But the thing that I remember most is just struggling in the fourth year. For the first few years, I kind of was lucky in like being able to learn quickly, and well, I basically crammed all my exams up until then. But fourth year was when that barrier kind of hit. I feel like everyone hits that wall eventually where you kind of need to learn how to study properly.
Yeah, especially, did you have to do like because that would have been integrated masters, their master's thesis as well? So it was writing
Yeah.
and exams. Okay. Those long form like theses, they'll get you if you don't know about your ADHD, I feel like.
Yeah, that was I think the thesis was actually the bit that went the most smoothly.
Good.
But maybe at the start of my 4th year, that's when my NHS edit therapy started to end. So yeah, at that point I was managing depression a lot better, but was still struggling with like typical ADHD kind of symptoms like procrastination and I guess not being able to control my own attention. I hate to say it, but TikTok kind of diagnosed me with ADHD, and I guess it's a problem that was what diagnosed me and not the medical system that I've been engaging with for years of my life. But yeah, so I referred to myself for an ADHD assessment, I think just before the start of my 2nd semester in 4th year. But it was quite a hard time because, well, what I did was try and force myself to get through to the end of my degree because it was just one more semester. I got better with finances so that I didn't really have to work as much part-time. And I think in that 2nd semester, it was like 15 hours as opposed to like 25 hours a week.
That's a big difference, yeah.
Yeah. But during all of this, I was still struggling and still considering like dropping out of my studies or delaying the final semester until the next year. But yeah, I got through it, managed to scrape by with a first, which was right in the boundary threshold. So
Congrats.
yeah, thanks.
So then obviously you were dealing with a lot of kind of forcing yourself to get through the end of that integrated masters, and then you went into the PhD the following September, right? How was that like for you?
Not great. So yeah, I pushed myself that final semester, but then I worked full time as a chef over the summer with no break, and then went into the PhD full time. And by that point, I was just burnt out, and I kind of lost the ability to like force myself to do things. Not completely yet, but the therapy kind of emphasized that I need to think more healthily about things, and the way I'd force myself to do things was like, yeah, basically bullying myself. Yeah, that was harder to do during the PhD, and the lack of deadlines didn't help because with a PhD, it's just one deadline a year, and that's your yearly review. But yeah.
You mentioned obviously you referred yourself to ADHD services. Then that came through, it says about 2023 here. So how was that getting your diagnosis during your PhD, which obviously is still ongoing? What was that like getting your formal diagnosis?
Mixed feelings. Yeah, I was struggling throughout that first year of my PhD, but when I got the diagnosis, I was happy about it. Like finally, I don't feel like I'm like the only one in the world who feels like or thinks like I do. After that diagnosis, it kind of made it even harder, almost impossible to just push myself to do things, because then like I wouldn't be able to say things to myself like, why can't you just do this? Because a lot of those questions ended up being responded to by like, because it's ADHD.
Yeah. Building that self-compassion takes a while.
Yep. And it takes away the ability to do things at first. But by that point, a lot of the things that I was doing was like under stress. So trying to switch to like doing things whilst being calm and enjoying the process, that that was not something I was used to. And apparently that's where the skill regression comes in, because it's easier to recall things and knowledge and skills when you're in the same state as when you learnt it. And I think it's like state dependent memory or something like that. Yeah, after the diagnosis, it felt like I couldn't really function. And there was a lot of toxic, kind of unhealthy thoughts getting into my head, like feeling like I could only function if I was depressed, like suffering from depression rather than managing it. But the ADHD medication was great.
Good, I'm glad. So we'll kind of bring this towards nowadays a little bit. So I'm just looking through the notes, and obviously the medication's great, but you said that the ADHD coaching and therapy you needed was unavailable, and it looks like that combined with the medication led to a medical interruption.
Yeah.
What was that like? Also, was this ADHD coaching through DSA that was unavailable?
So what I was looking for was like a psychoeducational kind of thing, so that I could learn about how I best worked as an ADHDer and how to best support myself. And yeah, I heard ADHD therapy is available, but it wasn't available in my area. So yeah, I took a medical interruption to kind of, I guess, reset and get used to the medication. But shortly afterwards, I bought a CPD course in autism and ADHD and higher education. Like that was the cheapest one that I could find, and that was actually quite good in terms of content, but not in terms of accessibility.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. It's always the ones that claim to be accessible.
Yeah, it was just lots of reading, and there was some videos, but I think the reading heaviness of it made it take a lot longer to finish, because I'm not a big reader.
Yeah, that's fair. I find reading just very fatiguing.
Yeah, same.
I did literature, so who knows. But you've returned, you're back now, you're back part-time. What led you to that decision?
A lot of stressing about whether I continue full-time and risk not getting a PhD, or doing it part-time, letting myself take on these multiple projects that distracted me from the PhD. And both had their pluses and minuses. So switching part-time, the huge negative of that was the financial insecurity. Like I didn't have anything to replace the loss of income going part-time. But I think I started off teaching more, and then I was lucky enough to join the library student team at that point. I think it was just over a month of stressing.
That's fair. It's good that you took the decision that would be best for you. And then you also joined the disabled communities around the same time, right?
Yeah, I did. So when I came back to part-time study, I heard about this accessibility complaints being done from the previous year, but the students who joined together to do that complaint graduated. So I took over, and that pushed me to join the disabled communities. Like, I kind of avoided them because I wrongly labelled myself as not disabled enough to join the disability communities, but then the ADHD diagnosis kind of pushed me over as well. And I just knew that with this accessibility complaint, I needed to learn more about ways to get this sorted and resolved.
That feeds quite nicely into the next question, because you say you got involved with the disabled students networks and everything like that, and I wanted to ask you whether there are any like club societies or initiatives that made a significant positive difference to your experience of higher education.
So at the start of COVID, me and a friend and another person in our course, we got together and created one of the first Discord servers for the University of Manchester. It was like the maths Discord server. Yeah, it was the first one for maths specifically. I've heard there was other ones before that. I think that was quite good because that kind of got me involved in like the social aspect, and I already knew by that point that a good motivation for studying was helping other students with their like learning. Getting this maths Discord together was quite beneficial, especially during remote learning. Like for me, yeah, as a result, I kind of got more interested in like the community building kind of side of the university experience, and I got involved in the Maths Society in my 4th year. Helped rebuild it from the lockdowns and COVID because a lot of the practices were forgotten about. In my first year, I attended one event, the yearly maths ball, and I helped bring that back just from using memory. I don't think I was one to get involved in social events, and I think I got more enjoyment in the leadership aspect and trying to make a difference. Just being part of the Maths Society committee helped with the event management and financial skills as well. Yeah, I think I remained as president during my first year of my PhD, but after that, I think I've been leaning towards more of the disability stuff, which a lot more work, I feel like.
Yeah, and it's got some amazing people behind it as well, and I feel like there's quite a good community there. And I think that especially if, say, you've had a non-linear academic experience, right? They are a hugely empathetic bunch of people from what I understand and can see. That must make what you're doing with the disability activism a much more affirming thing than it would be otherwise. And speaking of that, actually, so this is a question I ask all of my guests. No is a valid answer, but I'm also aware you do a lot of work in disability activism. Have you experienced any instances of your disability neurodivergence proving helpful in a higher education setting?
Yes. But I feel like I've never really seen disabilities like a superpower. When I was really young, I guess 16-ish, I watched that Hannibal TV series, and there's this moment where I think the quote is, "Fear is the price of imagination." And I think around the time, like, I kind of knew that like higher intelligence was associated with like increased rates of depression. So I kind of, without knowingly doing this, I kind of framed disabilities as like a neutral thing. On the one hand, there's this downside, but on the other, it's balanced out by this positive. So yeah, a good example, the more impactful bit that's proved helpful is like my depression. Like the main part of that is like it kind of makes it difficult to place value on myself like independently, except when it's in the context of like how other people view me. And I kind of struggle building like motivation in prioritizing myself. Like, for example, I'm a gamer, but I haven't really played any proper games properly, like maybe once or twice a month at the moment. But a lot of my energy is spent towards like helping other people, and that kind of drives me more. And then when it comes to like self-care, it kind of goes full circle. Like if I don't look after myself, then I won't be able to fully commit myself to this advocacy work.
And I feel like that always helps with a lot of self-compassion as well.
Yeah.
And like you have to be compassionate, because if you're not in a good state, then how are you gonna work? And I know that like managing attention as well, that can personally, I've seen this as well, and I'm just having a look at the notes. That can lead to coming up with ideas that you wouldn't come up with otherwise.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's the same for you as well.
Oh no, it is the same. With autism, I think people say it's like a strength in like depth of attention, whereas ADHD is like I kind of see it as a strength in the connectivity between subjects and like recognizing those associations. And it doesn't help that we like just mind wander and like go down these connections really quickly. But that's what I find as my strength in my position. I have multiple roles, but because I'm able to focus on those connections, I kind of found a strength that I can link together like distinct projects across those roles. And there's less energy put into all of the roles as a whole because I'm focusing on the overlaps between them.
Yeah, so it naturally feels like stuff you're doing already. I think that's... I mean, yeah. I kind of did the same. I'd run brunches during my master's in my second year, and people were like, "Oh my god, you're doing so much." I was like, "Well, no, because I know this gets me out the house, and like this does good things. It's like this is just good habit stacking." And I feel like it's exactly the same thing. So we've kind of run through your educational journey, mainly like we went year through your integrated masters, but we also had a look through your PhD journey as well. And obviously that was, especially coming into uni, was a very interesting time for you. Even coming back for your PhD, you returned during burnout, and that's like that's intense. 0 out of 10. I don't recommend it. I did it for my masters. It sucked. But I was wondering if there was anything you wish you'd known about university before starting. Obviously, I appreciate you didn't really have your diagnosis of ADHD then, but whether there was anything you'd noticed or wished that you'd known.
I wish I knew that if I felt alone in my own experiences and struggling with procrastination or fatigue, I should try and determine why, and to always remember that I'm the expert of my own experiences. I was trying to determine why, but I didn't really unmask. So like when I went to medical professionals, a lot of the time they kind of dismissed what I was going through because I was just masking that well. It doesn't help that I had to get access to my medical notes for the ADHD assessment, but when I first mentioned that I felt kind of different and maybe I should have an autism assessment, it was when I was like first at therapy when I was 17, and in the notes it was like maintains eye contact and seems to pay attention. So years later it kind of annoys me. I think I place too much trust in medical professionals as well as other people because of the losing trust in reality kind of stuff. But if I saw myself as the expert of my own experiences, I feel like that would have delayed my diagnosis less, and I wouldn't have had to struggle for so many years.
And I guess on that note, I'll just hop straight into the next question, is what advice would you give to someone who's struggling to balance their studies, their health, and the bureaucracy of potentially failing medical systems?
Make sure to allocate time for yourself and allow yourself to actually rest. Like sometimes we're forced to rest because we're mentally or physically exhausted, and I found that criticizing myself because I had to unintentionally rest just reduces the benefits of resting completely. So I was in a cycle of like constant exhaustion and then being forced to rest but not actually resting. So it seemed like I was being lazy, but actually I was just spiraling in terms of low energy.
I had this debate with people actually a lot during my masters where it was like, hey, have you been resting or have you been not working and you're mad at yourself for not working? Because those are two very distinct things.
Yeah.
You can get to the point where people can't tell the difference. That's when I start to get a bit concerned.
Yeah, I hate that there's not enough focus on that generally. If I actually let myself rest when I had to, there would be a lot less procrastination back then.
Yeah, and also try and find a routine that works for your dopamine or is kind of friendly for your brain. So thought you were a little cut for time, so I might have to just paraphrase a little bit, but also building frameworks that you can use for like forms and templates, so you can just paste it in, and finding those techniques I could map out where I could save energy the next day, and like the things I could do when I was low on energy. And I think what you're suggesting is kind of the same, but a little bit more, I guess, bureaucratic in terms of its goal.
Yeah, I just remembered I also bulk cooked on the weekends so that I wouldn't have to worry about food during the weekdays, which is quite a good strategy as well.
Yeah, another one I did is there was a market day every Wednesday in Oxford, and because I could only shop one day a week, because that was the day the veg market was, I would be there. And now that won't work for everyone, but I think it's finding those little techniques that work for you and really leveraging them to make it friendly for you.
Yeah, I think it's important to also like investigate the different ways. Like I got a Fitbit to track my health factors like heart rate and whatever, but that kind of became quite useful in like understanding myself and working out why things happened. Yeah, being able to track sleep, that's always great. But being able to track when you might be ill, that's also great.
Yeah, no.
I realise I don't actually realise until symptoms are actually there. But yeah, it would definitely impact my ADHD and depression, even though I wouldn't realise I was ill until the next day usually.
Yeah, no, it's sneaky. We're going to go to rapid fires if that's okay. We've only got a few questions left. So I was wondering, in a few sentences, how do you think we can improve the experience of higher education? I guess for people in your position, let's say that, as both individuals and a society.
Embed underrepresented voices throughout the life cycle of projects, like including at the project team level, like focus groups. Great, but it could be better.
Listening is important.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know, focus groups capture a lot, but they don't capture everything. Like there's always going to be decisions that you didn't foresee making. But I guess the next one is like invest more time researching the history of concerns, because back to that accessibility complaint, it was a complaint that went back more than a decade.
Oh, wow.
And it helped knowing that history. But like after I escalated the group complaint, the following year, the group complaint was raised again by a different student cohort. And it helped for them to realise that there was a previous complaint to build on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it saves a lot of the work because there's things that they can already reference. And that actually feeds really well into what I wanted to ask you next, which was, if you could, what's one thing you'd immediately change about your institution, about Manchester, to make it a more inclusive place?
I don't think big changes are good. So I think the immediate change would be like for a strategy that would implement gradual changes. I'm very frustrated by the lack of open source projects. Not even the lack of them. Like sometimes they would be like quite open but hard to find. So introducing a system where all of the projects are more easily findable and everyone can contribute to them, that would be great, especially for disabled students, where it's both hard to be aware of and kind of hard to contribute so much to such projects. And like if they were more visible, then like we would be able to contribute a lot more to the outcomes and make sure the disabled student voice is represented. But then I guess long term, I really don't like hierarchies. I've always had poor experiences with them. I feel like power hierarchies are kind of non-inclusive. I'm also aware that the lack of hierarchy is also equally non-inclusive and has its own barriers as well. But the university is very hierarchical in all of its levels, and I feel like if there was some introduction of like flattening the hierarchy, making some teams more democratic and collaborative, that would be also great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And hopefully, as the disabled networks at your university develop, that will change a little bit as well. We're gonna completely change tack now because I have about a minute to ask you about your PhD topic, because I obviously read what it is at the start, but it's a lot of very technical jargon I don't quite understand. So maybe if you can summarize it in what you do in a few sentences, I would really appreciate it.
That's a difficult one.
Yeah, there's lots of different words. I mean, lots of different things.
So yeah, my PhD is on density combinatorics of amenable groups. So groups are like a set of elements and a binary operator, and there's some rules like around them that make them make sense. A good example is like the integers and addition. And then amenable groups are just groups that you can define average functions on, and that's quite a bit of a pun because like they're talking about mean averages.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, density relates to like the size of a subset of a group. So for example, with the integers, like the odd numbers would have a natural density of a half. I guess that could be explained as like because the odd numbers cover half of the numbers. But yeah, density combinatorics relates to like problems around patterns in infinite subsets. Like for me specifically, it's looking at infinite sum sets. So yeah, I guess the best example is like the even numbers. Like you can find a sum set, infinite sum set, and that's of the even numbers, and that's just like the odd numbers plus the odd numbers. And yeah, sum sets are just like the sum between two sets.
Okay. So it's essentially like set manipulation and then looking at densities? Kind of?
Looking at positively dense subsets, which are like infinite to a decent extent, because yeah, infinite subsets don't always have positive density. But yeah, what my research does is take those problems, and we use something called Furstenberg's correspondence principle to take it to a dynamical system, which is just a space with a transformation defined on it. So for example, like gas particles in a container, and the transformation is like where each particle goes to after each second of time.
Okay.
Yeah, and then ergodic theory is just looking at how averages behave in a dynamical system over time.
Okay.
But yeah, my research, I take problems in density combinatorics of amenable groups, put them in a dynamical setting, and then use ergodic theory to prove those problems.
That is the most pure math thesis title I've ever heard in my life. It's cool though, especially with kind of the applications that you were talking about there with like the gas and stuff like that. Those are cool analogies. Right. We've covered a lot of ground today, Kai. We're gonna wrap up there. I have one last question before we close. In one or two sentences, I appreciate we've covered a lot of ground today. what is one key takeaway that you would like listeners to remember from your story?
Could I do a top 3?
If you can do them quickly. Yeah.
Okay, number 1. Sometimes you gotta accept you're a generalist rather than a specialist and go part-time PhD and do all of these other different projects. Number 2, you need to trust yourself more. If you're finding yourself trusting other people's experiences over your own, that is a huge sign that there's a problem. And then number 3, what is number 3? I had it in my head. It's just on the tip of my tongue.
That's all right. We got a second.
Oh, yeah. Got it. No, I don't. I guess I'll leave it at top 2.
We're good with the top 2. Kai, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm just going to close up. So, HG Enabled is the show dedicated to sharing our experiences of disability, neurodivergence, and long-term health conditions in UK higher education. If you are interested in becoming a patron, there is a link in the episode description. You get some early episodes and some of my nature photography sometimes when I upload it. It's £1 a month. Come along, be fun. If you want to support the show but can't dedicate yourself to a monthly commitment for whatever reason, that's fine. You can buy me a coffee through also another link in the episode description. And then other than that, I think we're good. Thank you so much for listening. Kai, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.